Good afternoon. It's the Liberty Tactics Show with Lou and James. It is the 12th.
The 12th. I had it written
and
down
it's just gone 5 o'clock. Hi, James.
Hello,
You okay?
lovely Lou. How are you today?
I'm very, very well. A little bit stressed, traffic everywhere, lots of rain. But I got here in one piece, thank goodness.
Lovely, goodness.
We're not going to start with the usual news stories because we have a really special guest tonight. A couple of weeks ahead of a, land breaking
That's
event
much
going
thicker than the record when you can break some land.
This is true. Yeah. Event at Wembley, never one seen before. On the 27th at Wembley Stadium, and it's no other than the wonderful David Icke. Good afternoon, David.
Hello, Lou.
How you doing?
I'm all right. Yeah, good.
Good. We've got loads and loads to talk about. First of all, how are things going with the preparations for Wembley?
Oh, very good. We booked the arena, 5,500 seats last February, and about 3 people, particularly one, has pulled it all together. That's the kind of team that we've been working on it with, and it's all coming together because those people have worked fantastically hard and committed to what we're trying to do, and it seems to be all falling into place.
Fantastic. Yeah, I'm coming. Unfortunately, James is away on holiday, but I'm coming up for it, and many others from down here in Devon are all going to be travelling up, so we're all really excited. And I see now you're going to be streaming it live as well via the internet. Yeah,
we had so many requests from around the world to stream it that we looked at it and we managed to put something together. And I've just seen the list of people who have joined the initial list that have joined the streaming, and it's like a map of the world, Lou. Honestly, it's unbelievable. It's just everywhere you could think of, and places you wouldn't think of are actually going to be watching it, and that's very, very important because, first of all, we need to come together energetically. We need to also understand that although it's not on the TV news, there's vast numbers of people who think the same now and are starting to get it. But also I'm going to spend, in talking time alone, the best part of 10 hours over 4 sections, connecting a vast number of strands and dots. And only when you do that can the picture within which our daily experience is happening, can it be seen? Can it be seen where it's coming from, why it is? And it's like when you start, there's strands and there's strands and there's strands and there's strands and there's strands, and it builds up and builds up. And eventually it's like people are looking at concepts that in and of themselves, as a strand in and of themselves, they'd go, oh, you are having a laugh, mate. You are joking that's happening. But with the other strands before, suddenly, oh my goodness, this makes sense. I can understand why it's true now. And so that's what it's like. And that's why I put a thing on my website. If anyone's going to watch on the internet, it's not something to dip in and out of, because if you do, you'll lose it.
Yeah, absolutely.
You'll see some interesting things, but the true volume of context can only be seen if you watch it from start to finish, because it is a story, and it is like layering and layering and layering information until the tapestry can be seen. And the tapestry is fantastic. I mean, in my experience of doing this now for 23 years nearly, I've never seen anything go as deep in the rabbit hole as this is going. And also to connect the number of dots this is going to connect. I mean, this is like 23 years of full-time work coming together on one day. Yeah.
I mean, a lot of things have, especially over this last week, been coming out. Obviously, with regards to the Jimmy Savile scandal, we had Bill Maloney from Pie and Mash Films came down to the column on, he came Wednesday, and he came live with us on air on Thursday with Brian Garish. And he was, he's been talking about Jimmy Savile for a long time, Bill Maloney. And more things over this last week are coming out with regards to Jimmy Savile. What are your thoughts on it?
Well, I've just been writing an article about it for the last 2 days, going out over the weekend. And I've headed it, Jimmy Savile, Doorman to the Cesspit. You could say doorway to the cesspit as well, for reasons I'll explain. I was first told that Jimmy Savile was a paedophile in about 1997, 98 by a number of people, but including the people who had serious connections into the royal family. Not that they were members of the royal family, but they were very close to people that were on the inside. And they told me about the Satanism that went on in the royal family, the pedophilia and all that stuff. And then out of nowhere, they brought up Jimmy Savile. And of course, I'm into a conversation about, royal family, how they treated Diana, pedophilia and all this stuff. And suddenly Jimmy Savile comes out of nowhere, this aging disc jockey. And I obviously asked the question, where does he fit in? And they told me about it. Not just his pedophilia, but his necrophilia. He has a thing about having sex with dead people. And it was pointed out quite rightly to me, why do you think he volunteered to be a porter and a volunteer in hospitals, particularly the one in Leeds? Because it gave him access to mortuaries and dead people, basically. And if you look at some of the real most extreme, I mean, in and of itself, it's extreme, but most extreme of pedophilia, one of the things that they desire that gives them the biggest high is sex with disabled people, either physically disabled or mentally disabled. And again, because of his charity work, he was able to have access to people like that, to children like that. Also, what is happening, Lou, in the media at the moment is that and I can understand it in the initial stages, as long as it doesn't stay there, it's focusing on him as a paedophile and his own paedophile activities and one or two other, showbiz people around him. But the biggest story, the biggest picture story, is that he was a procurer of children, and he procured them for the royal family. He procured them for people like Ted Heath, who is exposed as a Satanist, paedophile, and mass child killer, serial child killer, in a book called The Biggest Secret. It came out in 1998. He was alive then for years afterwards. And he was therefore untouchable. If you look at some of the quotes that he gave at various times, he said he was untouchable. And he gave an interview for Esquire magazine in which he said, the thing about me is I get things done and I work deep cover. I've known the royal family for a million years. He was talking about his connections to the royal family and how he was a regular visitor to Buckingham Palace, Kensington Palace, where Diana lived after the marriage to Charles broke up, Highgrove, the country estate of Prince Charles. And he also said, significantly, that the man who introduced him to the royal family initially in the 1960s was Lord Mountbatten. And anyone who's done research into high-level paedophilia, Lord Mountbatten's name will come up. Of course, he was the mentor and Mr. Uncle, big uncle to Prince Charles. And these names are not a surprise to me, because these names came up in the conversations I had with these insiders quite a long time ago now. And because he was procuring for children, this is why he was untouchable. People say, well, why didn't people know about this? Why didn't the BBC uncover it? Why did all these, inquiries, police inquiries, just stop and go nowhere? Because the way these rings work is that they put their people in all the key areas of society, the institutions of law enforcement, of judiciary, of media, of politics. Of course, royalties are much based on it. And therefore, they watch each other's backs. And when you're procuring children for the rich and famous and the powerful and all the rest of it, then your back is their back. Because if you go under and it comes out, they go under and it comes out. And one or two things happens to these procurers of children. Either they keep quiet and are safe, like Savile, hence he got to the age of 84, or you're considered dangerous and not safe, in which case you're no longer with us. And Savile understood the game, and he played the game to his own benefit. And another question, maybe someone can answer it. Maybe there's a plausible answer. But I look at his Rolls Royce that went for about 160 grand. I look at his other cars, Bentleys and stuff. I look at, apparently, according to the media anyway, he has at least 8 homes. I look at the millions of pounds in cash on top of all that, in bank accounts that was in his will. And I look at a guy who, yes, would have earned quite well in the 60s and 70s as the disc jockey and Jim Will Fix It and personal appearances and advertising. But then I look at a guy of 84 who's done none of that for decades and has no real obvious means of living that lifestyle, but still does. And, you know, all I can say is procuring children for rich and famous pedophiles is a very lucrative business because you obviously get well paid for it if you do it well, and he appears to have done from their point of view. And they also watch your back because your back is their back. And I found it interesting. There was an interview with a guy in, I think it was the Daily Mail this week, a guy called Guy Marsden, who was a nephew of Jimmy Savile. And he said that at the age of 13, he lived up in Leeds. He ran away from home with a few friends to London. And he ended up, as they do, at Euston Station, and was picked up by some sleazy guy, as they normally are, and taken to some what was described as a grubby flat. And he said around 4 days later, Uncle Jimmy Savile turns up, not because he knows his nephew's there, but he's come to see the sleazy guy. And he said he's 59 now, this guy, and married with children and all the rest of it. But he said that when Jimmy Savile turned up, he thought, oh, no, I'm in for it now, because he'd run away from home and didn't tell his parents where he was. But no, he said, Jimmy just took us to a better place. And he told the story of how he and his friends were taken to the very palatial apartment of or a house of a so-called famous pop impresario, and that he witnessed paedophile parties at which Savile would bring children. Sometimes he would bring along, he said, someone who was dressed like a priest, which gave the feeling that these kids were coming from children's homes, exactly where they were coming from. And so back in the 60s it was going on, and he's done it ever since.
It's sort of been a bit of an open secret. A lot of people have seemed to know that Jimmy was in, he liked the young ones. I mean, even in his autobiography, Love is an Uphill Thing, there's quite a few telling tales that he describes, getting young, wayward, young teenage girls and all that. And yet, nothing was ever done about it. Now that he's dead, of course, yeah, he can't tell any tales himself, but you would still think that they would be trying to repress anything getting out, because once the eyes are on Jimmy, then they may be on to his clients. Do you think this was just like a natural thing where there was just too much evidence coming out and the story broke naturally, or do you think they're trying to, like, it's just surprising me that it's all coming out now, when so clearly there's been a cover up. You would have thought, if they really wanted to keep that information stum, they'd be able to.
Well, it's a good question, and we won't really know for a while, I don't think, and don't think we ever do unless we've got insider knowledge on these things. But, it is true that while every day this network of families, this cabal gets more and more power on the surface anyway of the system, it's still not, got control of everything.
I mean, it says a lot for Esther Ranson, saying that she had her thoughts that it was going on. She's the head of Childline. I mean, alarm bells surely should be raised here, because also apparently Childline was set up sort of in Aberdeen, and we know there's been, other cases up in Aberdeen. And it's just the fact that Esther Ranson, being the head of Childline, obviously access to kids' calls. What do you think on that?
Well, I think it's something that should be legitimately investigated. I think anything to do with children should be legitimately investigated to make sure that it stands up. I mean, I'm not going to, say anything about it this time because I've not researched that particular organization. But, it's possible. I'm not saying it happened, but it's possible that this was one that got through the net because it was basically all this has come out as a result of one television program. And then that gave confidence for other people to come forward. However, it's going to be significant for me where it goes from here. Because at the moment, I talk about defending the first domino. And defending the first domino in this case is for none of it to come out. Once it has come out, you defend the second domino. You accept that he was a paedophile and he was a mass paedophile all over the country, and there was a cover-up of it. The second domino you don't want to fall, so that's the next form of defense, is that he was a procurer for the rich and famous. Now, we'll see where that goes. I was talking to a journalist today and pointing this same thing out, that, if it stops where it is now, we learn more about the cesspit behind the smiley faces and the morality of the system. But we need to go the next step forward, because once we can connect Savile's procurement to not just soap stars that people are talking about and other people in showbiz, that needs to happen. Yes, if it's true, I'm sure in many cases it is. But what we need to do is to connect this through to the real people that are orchestrating it, to the royal family, to the top politicians. I was told by many people, which is why I was confident to go and name him when he was alive for years afterwards, that Ted Heath was a Satanist, was a torturer of children and a mass killer of children. He loved to kill them. I was told this by enough people in the 1990s, the late 1990s, mid 1990s, to go with it. And in this book, The Biggest Secret, and nothing since has given me anything but confirmation of this. And to see him connected into the Jersey Children's Home, he was also connected by some researchers into Kincora, the boys' home in Belfast. That scandal broke in the 1980s time, and Mountbatten's also been connected to that by some researchers, which connects us into Savile again, who said that Mountbatten was the guy that introduced him to the royal family, and which led him to have a close relationship with Prince Philip, till they had a big row and they fell out apparently, and also with Prince Charles, which has been even come out in the mainstream media, the Christmas cards and all that stuff. Also, don't forget, I mean, he may have been exaggerating, but certainly it happened on some occasions that Savile spent Christmas with Margaret Thatcher. And I'm not saying Margaret Thatcher knew the background, but Margaret Thatcher's cabinet, like the Blair cabinet, was awash with paedophiles. You see, in so many ways, when you're creating there's another reason that I can explain in a second, if you like, of why this obsession with paedophilia is as it is. But when you're bringing together different groups, like different political parties, to push in the same direction, you need cement. You need cement to connect people in these different elements of the system to push in the same direction. And thus you will have secret societies doing that. So people in the Labour Party, Conservative Party, Liberal Democrats, some will be members of the same secret society. You have things like the Friends of Israel groups in each party, which is another cement. But two major cements on top of that are paedophilia and Satanism. And if you can get somebody into the ring, into the system, either as a procurer or as a partaker of this nightmare, then those people are going to do what you say from then on. You get a prime minister who's been compromised in this way, and he will pass and press for whatever legislation you want, whether he's conservative or Labour or anything. And there's an enormous amount of blackmail going on, which is leading to politicians pressing for things that they wouldn't otherwise press for and pass and bring into law. And this side of it is often connected to paedophilia. I mean, it's a well-known technique in the United States and Britain with MI5, MI6, etc., that they will provide people like foreign diplomats and what have you with children, if that's their desire, and then they will film it. And once they've filmed it, they are no longer representing their country or whatever they're supposed to be representing. They are representing whatever British intelligence says they're representing, because they can destroy them overnight. And it's interesting when you watch people who in politics who have said they stand for this and stand for that, and at one point possibly genuinely did, but then suddenly they go in the opposite way. Well, maybe they've changed their mind, or maybe their mind's been changed for them. Yeah, I mean, that's plain to see. A lot of the time these politicians will come out with policies that it's absolute suicide, and there's no rhyme or reason for it. And obviously the only thing that is going to push them to that, to lose their careers basically, is they've got dirt on them. And this is the same thing with like Bohemian Grove and all these sorts of I mean, Stanley Kubrick, Eyes Wide Shut. It's that sort of thing. There's dirt on absolutely everyone, and there's that sort of there's that you don't even need to have blackmail. No, everybody just knows that.
Bill came out with
this is society. This is the situation. This is why they're looking to bring people into politics. It's one reason why there's so many who have these desires, because they know that they're straight in the back pocket because of this. And this is one reason, but there's another, I should suggest, bigger reason why this is all pervading. And that takes us out of the world of the conscious mind into other dimensions of reality and entities that feed off human energy. I've been writing and talking about this for a very long time, and it absolutely connects into pedophilia for this reason. I learned through intense research in the 1990s and just after in America and Britain, but particularly America, that these entities, they feed off human energy, yes, but there's a particular human energy that they want more than anything else, and that is the energy of children before puberty. Now, we see puberty as a hormonal change in this reality that we experience, what I call the hologram. But if you go back to the base construct of this reality, it's not what we see. It's actually a vibrational information field, a waveform information field. And so what we see as a hormonal change in our conscious mind reality is actually an expression of a vibrational information a waveform change at the foundation information construct of this reality, and they want that energy before that change takes place. This is the obsession with children. So what they do, because these pedophiles, especially the upper echelon pedophiles in the bloodline, which are with this hybrid bloodline, which is because of the greater genetic compatibility, it means yet again on the base construct, it's a much closer vibrational compatibility. It means that these bloodline people or families, whatever, are much more easily and more powerfully possessed by these entities beyond human sight than the general run of the population, where the genetic and therefore the energetic compatibility is not as close. And so what they do is these possessing entities, which take control of the mental and emotional processes, they are stimulating this desire for sex with children. And when the sex is happening, the possessing entity is using the pedophile as a conduit to draw off the child's life force. There are some shaman around the world in native cultures that also talk about this, and I found this in research in the Western world and insiders in politics and many other things. But that's what's happening, and because there is this insatiable demand for this energy, there is this insatiable desire of pedophiles, because the two are connected. And because there's these two expressions of insatiable desire for sex with children and the energy drawn off it, there is an insatiable need for a constant throughput of children all over the world. And this is where the Saviles come in. This is where, on another level, the Hamiltons come in. In the Dunblane killer, Thomas Hamilton, he was a procurer of children for the elite as well. And these people are covered up as he was until Dunblane happened.
And of course, you were talking to Arizona Wilder, coming out with similar stories. There was Kathy O'Brien as well, talking about what went on. I mean, firstly, how is Arizona? Do you stay in touch with her? How is she?
Sat with us some years ago. Stay in touch with Kathy O'Brien. We had an email exchange only the other day, but Arizona just sort of disappeared. I said in my last book, if you're out there, contact me. Let's make sure you're okay.
Yeah.
But yes, you know, I picked up this theme from people all over the world, Australia, Africa, wherever you go, because, you know, as I said before, the world is controlled by the secret society equivalent of a transnational corporation. There is a headquarters of the secret society corporation. It's in Europe. There are major subsidiaries in places like the United States, but the headquarters is in Europe. And in each country, there is a network of secret societies and bloodline families and their agents and offshoots whose job it is to impose the centrally dictated global agenda upon their sphere of influence, their country. And at all levels, the global level, through the European Union levels, through national levels, into local community levels, because it is a holographic structure. Every part of the whole, no matter how small, is a smaller version of the greater whole. At every level, therefore, you find the same blueprint operating, and crucial to that blueprint is Satanism and pedophilia. Everywhere you go, everywhere.
Mm-hmm. And it goes back, I mean, thousands of years. The whole thing of taking people's children, all these decadent evil societies, the Aztecs, the Egyptians. I mean, they all have these cases where they would have to take the masses' children and sacrifice them to their gods and all this sort of thing. And even now, today, with the modern eugenics movement, you know, coming out of Galton and Darwin, you've got this obsession with killing children. We don't need to, I mean, the amount of papers that they come out with trying to promote infanticide, you know, oh, well, you're able to abort up to 2 or 3 years, you know, because they're not real people there. It takes someone, extremely sick to even think that's acceptable, and it makes you wonder how these people can get away with it, you know, because I'm pretty sure if a person off the street went and killed a 1-year-old baby, you wouldn't have a load of trendies coming up to you and saying that it was acceptable.
No.
It's a sickness, you know. It's very frustrating to even talk to other people about this sort of thing. Yeah. Because they think you're mad to even be talking about it. The one thing, sorry to rant on, but there was that book that the German government, it's sanctioned by the EU, about, you know, how to sexualize your daughter, how fathers should masturbate their daughters because women are growing up ashamed of their bodies because there's not a natural from the parents. But then we've got molesting them, and it's EU sanctioned.
And then you've got the Vatican City with the legal age of consent is, I think they've moved it up now. It was 12, wasn't it? I think they've moved it up to 14 now as well.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, but the thing is, it's all documented. It's black and white. There are these books out there. They're handing them to schools, and you talk about it, and people look at you like you're the nut job. And I know it's very frustrating, you know.
Yeah, a few things there. First of all, sacrificing young virgins to the gods, as they used to say, that's just code for children. That's all, prepubescent children, because they want this energy before puberty. And yeah, I mean, I was reading the other day that Harriet Harman, the deputy leader of the Labour Party, she represented an organisation at one point as a lawyer who wanted to bring down that age of consent for children. And you know, it's this obsession with children and sex with children, all that stuff. It just comes up all over the world, and there is a reason for it, and the reason is what I've been talking about. And this is something that people need to start to get their heads around. The fact that the world is not, and what is happening in this world is not confined to what you can see in the tiny frequency band that your eyes can bring into some kind of a physical world. It's much bigger than that. And to understand what goes on outside human sight is to have a much greater understanding of what goes on within human sight.
Yeah, yeah. I think moving on to maybe different topic, we're seeing now the whole agenda stepping up. Yesterday, I found a news article saying that by 2025, everyone will be using thumbs to pay or jewellery. We've had the government come out this week and say people can start applying for passports using their Facebook logins.
I actually want one.
And but then you're saying that security fears over Facebook are terrible. Yeah. More and more people having access to our personal details. I mean, the whole agenda is really, really speeding up, wouldn't you say, David?
Well, yes, and it was always going to. I mean, first of all, I said many, many years ago that there's going to come a time when the hidden will become seen. It has to. You know, if you're manipulating behind the scenes and in the shadows to bring about a transformation of society into this global Orwellian state, there has to come a point where it breaks the surface and you see it. Otherwise, it's not going to become real. You have to put the structures in there and you have to put the laws in there. And eventually there comes a point where so much of it has been done that, well, anyone with a brain on active duty can see it. And the other equation to that is the more power you centralize, the more power you have to centralize even quicker and to push on your agenda even quicker. I mean, you know, in the European Union, once they crossed the Rubicon of the Lisbon Treaty, which centralized enough power with the bureaucrats in Brussels for them to push on like never before, things within the European Union started to move real quick. And what's happening now is that the cabal have got so much control of the government structure that they can push on with outside or within the structure the very little resistance now to what they want to introduce in terms of surveillance control and the Orwellian architecture of the state. And thus we're seeing it happening faster and faster and faster. I mean, if you take Congress, I wish someone would, in Washington, and you take out one or two people, probably you could probably get them on the fingers of two hands. Or am I being optimistic? And that the rest of them are bought and paid for. They ain't going to stop you. You know, they're just going to vote as they're told to vote. They're going to vote in line with what they vote. And again, you know, everything connects to everything else. Whatever subject you talk about, the connections start. The reason a lot of those people in Congress vote the way they're told to vote without question or resistance is for the same reasons we've been talking about earlier on, because they're compromised and you know, they know that they do it or they're exposed, and thus whole parliaments, whole governments can be controlled this way. And we've reached the point where it's at such a level that they can push on almost at will. And that's why it's us, the people, that have to be the point of resistance, because don't even think about leaving it to the politicians anymore. They're not going to do it. They've not been doing it for a long time, but they're certainly not going to be doing it now, because the cabal's got that level of control of the system that they simply will not hold it back. We have to do it. And when we start to understand that, part the backside from the sofa and start to realize that we need to do this, because not doing it is not an option. The alternative is a bloody nightmare for adults alive today in the timescale we're talking about. Never mind our children and grandchildren, it'll be worse. That we really have nothing more important in our lives than focusing on this and dealing with it. And we can, you know, okay, you know, the tail's not wagging the dog, it's wagging the elephant in terms of numbers of who's doing the wagging and who's being wagged. And it's all this divide and rule and dividing attention and hijacking people's attention. Look at this, watch this, shut up, that is allowing it to happen. If we just grew up and looked at what is happening. We have the numbers to bring it to an end. But see,
but they've got the weapons and things. I mean, they're trying to disarm America. We've got nothing to stand up. You know, when people do come banging down our doors. This is what's kind of the scary thing, because the bad people, unfortunately, have taken control of this world.
Yeah, the point is, well, they've actually been in control of it for long as, you know, we call history virtually, but they're just getting more control now. But the point is, we do. If someone knocks at your door and there's only you answering it, you're absolutely bloody right. You know, this is why I say we need to take the system on together, because if people do it in isolation, they'll just get picked off. But if the street is full of people, you know, if instead of thousands in Wall Street, there is a million in New York and Wall Street, then there's nothing they can bloody do. And we have to use those numbers, because if we don't, they'll just pick us off. You know, because what they've done is so mind manipulate the population that they have recruited the law enforcers and the administrators of this Orwellian state from the population, who are the target population of those behind it. You know, I mean, I say to people in uniform, you know, take your uniform off. Where's your power? You won't have any power. The power's in your uniform, which is an extension of the state. And once you step out of that uniform, or step out of line in terms of doing what they demand within the uniform, you'll see where the real point of control is, and you're not in it. You know, I mean, this is what people in uniform need to understand. They have children and grandchildren as well. And this is coming for them, and it's coming for the people in uniform as well, those that will not do everything that they're told to do in terms of enforcing this. We're in this together, and what we need to do is get people, especially within this arena of law enforcement, etc., and administration, where people have been recruited from the target population, to start to realize that and to stop cooperating with the system. Because when you cut away the people who are the target population, you cut away the people who are from the target population, imposing on the target population, and are not doing it in awareness of the big picture, and you cut away more and you cut away more, you're left, even globally, with a tiny number of people who, in total awareness of where they're going and why, are sitting there looking at you. That's the number differential. But because they divide and rule the population, you know, I mean, look at it. You know, they'll get part of the target population to burn the Quran or whatever. And then another part of the target population will go crazy for burning the Quran, and we're away. It's so easy. That's the problem. Put down your bloody holy books. They're prisons. Pick them up later if you like, when we've sorted this, but put them down. Put down your political belief system. Put down your cultural belief system and your income bracket belief system and your racial belief system. We're all in this together, for goodness sake. And let's put that first, and not our software belief systems that have been specifically downloaded into you to divide and rule by playing you off against another downloaded belief system, which is actually the same but called a different name. Yeah. This is what needs to happen, because at the moment we're being divided and ruled into tyranny.
Yeah, it's very simple to see when you meet people. You can almost put them into like one of four boxes, and it's so cookie cutter their opinion. It's the Muslims are overtaking our country, or it's the this or the that, or it's the blacks or the whites, and you just want to say, look, guys, like, even if there was a fundamental problem there, it's still minute compared to the fact that we're all getting screwed right now.
Totally getting screwed. And of course, we got the election over in America next month.
Yeah, I mean, I read a good quote today. They said the reason why it wasn't a very interesting debate between the two vice presidents yesterday was because they're pretty much exactly the same. Which is, you look at the policies, you look at the voting records. I mean, they don't even bother to have the rhetoric anymore. They just basically, I guess they could just read off cook tips or something.
Well, we know about Obama. I mean, he can't get up on stage without an auto cue.
Yeah.
So.
But, I mean, there are people. I mean, there's people. I speak to a few people in the military and a couple of police, especially the older people, the vets that have been around for a while. They're really waking up to what's going on. But of course, you've got the problem where the system is, instead of hiring the best people to be policemen or in the military, they're actively going towards the people with, you know, slightly psychopathic tendencies, because they don't want people with a moral compass to actually question their orders. They just, you know, desperately.
But is there anyone moral in politics, really? Is there?
No, but I was talking about like in the military and in the police. I mean, a lot of people they sign up, don't they, to make a difference, even if they're completely misguided. But now, you know, they're actively making sure that they only hire the people that are pretty much, you know, will get off on the power trips, which is why you've got places like the TSA and that will do the most ludicrous things. And unfortunately, I was talking to a friend of mine in the States yesterday, and he just went into town with some black cargo pants on, a black shirt, and he had his dad's old border patrol hat on, and he said everybody was treating him like a king. And I said, isn't that disgusting?
It
that
is shocking. You
put yourself in a fake uniform, and the masses they treat you like some sort of, you know. Because
that's now what they're believing.
But it's really sad, and people go on about the evils of religion, but to me, the evils of people worshipping state is far more dangerous, and that is prevalent. I mean, the statism today is ridiculous, and that's, I think, the thing that we have to knock down. That this belief that the state is somehow an otherworldly thing that, you know, people tend to admit that they're, you know, that the politicians are all crooked in that, but then they still invest into that system, and it's like. So
what do we do, David, with the politicians? I mean, how do we get over all of this, David? I mean, how do we get these people out of power?
Well, first of all, it's absolutely right that they've been recruiting specific personality types for a long time. This is why they've transformed the dynamic and relationship between people and law enforcement. They're looking for the narcissists, the sociopaths, the psychopaths, and I tell you, you know, the decent copper who's in there trying to make a difference, and especially if been in there a long time, they must have a nightmare every day that they go into work because of the way that their whole environment has changed. I mean, for me, politics is a waste of time. Politics ain't going to change anything. You know why? Because it's not there to change anything for the benefit of the people. It's there to advance this agenda. It's real simple. You need to pass laws or ignore them, and then you need people to impose the laws. That's law enforcement and administration of government. So all you need is enough people in Parliament or Congress to outvote the no's to make it law, and they bypass that anyway now. And then once you've passed this law, then your law enforcement imposes the law on the people. It's real simple. And because there is no contract between politicians and the electorate during an election campaign, it means that they can say whatever they like in an election campaign just to get elected, and then do as they like when they get in. I mean, one of the most crazy examples of this is the Julia Gillard, the Australian Prime Minister, who said that her government would never introduce a carbon tax, and when she got into power, they've introduced a carbon tax. It's been devastating for the Australian economy, exactly as planned. So therefore, elections are irrelevant, because even if you vote for someone on the basis of what they say they're going to do, Barack Obama, I rest my case, they get in and they do the bloody opposite. So irrelevant. By voting, we're giving credence to a system that's totally corrupt and totally rigged. We've got to bypass it. You know, I've been saying this, you know, for so long. We need to stop cooperating with the system. You know, I use a simple analogy. Instead of moaning and saying, Big Brother gone mad, or what's the world coming to, when some neighbor or something is fined 200 quid for putting their wheelie bin out on the wrong day in the wrong place, then thousands of people in that area do the same day after day, week after week, until the law is changed. And they couldn't cope with that. You know, when we had a poll tax revolt, which I had some involvement in at some level on the Isle of Wight here, some years ago during the Thatcher administration, what actually happened in that revolt is that the poll tax affected not just the so-called working class, it affected the middle class, or a great chunk of it, in bigger houses. And thus, there was that divide and rule fault line was diluted and disappeared as a result of mutual effect. And as a result of that, people not paying it, refusing to pay it on a vast scale and all the rest of it, it had to change. Now, that was just a simple example of what we can do if we withdraw our support or our energy from our own enslavement. Okay, someone comes out of Downing Street or Washington and says, we've had a meeting and this is what's going to happen. If enough people in the population say it's not happening, we're not doing that, they have no power. Their power is in the belief in the target population that you must obey a law. Okay, I'm going to pass a law that the state's going to take your children away. All children, okay, week on Tuesday. So say goodbye. Okay, so would you accept that law? Oh, no, I wouldn't accept that law. Okay, so there is a line where you wouldn't cross in terms of just obeying a law because some dark suit crowd have passed it. Therefore, where is that line? And that line is already well past what we as a people should be cooperating with. Don't cooperate with your own enslavement. You can do it individually up to a point, but they can pick you off. We need to do that en masse together. And if we do that, it's all over. If we don't do that, then what is happening now is going to go on happening. It is as simple as that. We're at the fork in the road here. We're at big choice time. We come together and stop cooperating with our own enslavement, or we cooperate with our own enslavement until it doesn't need our cooperation any longer.
Mm-hmm.
Agreed.
And it's definitely not going to get better because whenever they release a new set of ludicrous rules and legislation, and people follow it, they're like, right, let's push the boundary even
David,
more. So.
I just want to touch on what's going on over in Syria, Iran and Israel with you. I mean, we're seeing all sorts of reports coming out of Syria. We have Patrick Henningsen, who I know you've met and he's interviewed you a few times. He comes on the show really with regular updates. The pressure's really mounting on Assad at the moment. Now we've got the pressure coming with Israel and Iran. What are your thoughts on all of this?
Well, this is a long-term plan, and the game is selling the plan that's been long on the paper. I mean, if you look at what some people have said on the inside in America about seeing this plan for the takeover of country after country in the Middle East and North Africa and the Near East, and how it's just coming to pass, it's bloody obvious. I mean, there's that television interview with Wesley Clark, who's not a God's gift to humanity himself. He led the NATO invasion of the former Yugoslavia. But he said in an interview on television in 2007, 4 years after the invasion of Iraq, that immediately after 9/11, that he was told by someone at the Pentagon that there was a coup being plotted by Dick Cheney, Don Rumsfeld, Paul Wolfowitz, all these people from the Project for the New American Century, this think tank that was orchestrating the events of the Bush administration. And he said that Cheney, Rumsfeld, Wolfowitz, and what this person told him was a half a dozen other collaborators from the Project for the New American Century were going to orchestrate an invasion of Iraq. He said that 6 weeks later, he saw the same officer and he said, "Why haven't we attacked Iraq? Are we going to still attack Iraq?" And he said, the officer said, "Sir, it's worse than that." He said the officer pulled a piece of paper from his desk and said, I've got this memo from the Secretary of Defense's office. It says we're going to attack and destroy the governments in 7 countries in 5 years. We're going to start with Iraq, and then we're going to move to Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and Iran. And therefore, you've got the wish list, you've got the plan, now you've got to somehow sell it. So, okay, Iraq. Weapons of mass destruction, that'll do it. They haven't got any. It doesn't matter. As long as the people think they do, we can go in. Okay, gotcha. We're already in Afghanistan, bin Laden, 9/11, all that stuff. A lot of people believe that. Okay, now, Libya, what can we do? And, of course, what they did in Libya was to train and arm, quote, rebels, including bringing many people in from the outside. And then they shot at government targets. And, of course, at that point, nothing's being said in the media, nothing's being said politically. And what happens then is the government replies to those attacks. And at that point, in jump the media, in jump the politicians, and they say that Gaddafi's killing his own people. And having achieved the slaughter and devastation of Libya as a result of that, the next question is, well, where's next? Next, Syria. What do we do? Well, it worked in Libya, didn't it? We'll do the same there. And so what we've seen in Syria is a mirror of Libya, which is trained people, most of them, in Syria's case, most of them from the outside through Turkey, etc., and armed by these so-called Arab countries that are actually just puppets of the West. Saudi Arabia.
Al-Qaeda mercenary forces.
Yeah, and we've seen in Syria exactly the same. But what's happened in Syria is that Assad's military has not succumbed on anything like the scale that it did in Libya. And therefore, we're now in a situation where they've got to think again, how do we pull this off? Because it's not happening as fast as we want. Of course, one of the ways they do is make more excuses by telling more lies that they have to go in and save the Syrians, of course, by dropping bombs on them or whatever. But yeah. We've got in Iran the excuse, of course, of the so-called nuclear program. So what they've done is they've got this list of countries, target countries, and now they're picking off the excuses to go into these various countries. Because if they picked one excuse and just kept going into countries and bombing them as themselves, then what was going on in terms of taking over the place would be obvious. So they're trying to do it in ways that are not obvious, but to anyone with a mind are blatantly obvious the way, what's going on out there.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Sorry, David, I've just got a question. I know you've only got till 6, but Danny's just asked, can we ask David about house repossession and fraudulent mortgages, as it's one of your biggest viewed videos on YouTube? What are we doing? Why are we letting this happen? I'd really be happy if you could ask him about this.
Well, this line that we talked about earlier, this line that you cross where you have so much power that you think you can do what you like. And we have seen since 2008 and the banking crash in which the people, through the government, bailed out the banks at the devastating consequence for the people. That the banks now are, or those that run the banks, are in a situation where they think, well, we do what we bloody like. Mm. So we've got this situation, not least in America, where the banks are foreclosing on houses that don't even own. I mean, they've passed through so many different organizations as the mortgage has been sold on. But very few of them are actually certain to be owned by anybody. And again, we come to this situation of, are we going to accept this? Mm. See, if an individual, this is a classic example of what I've just been talking about. If an individual is foreclosed, legally or illegally, immorally either way, and takes on the bank, well, the bank can pick them off. And you know, the judiciary are largely controlled by those that control the bank. So they get often almost all the time, the judicial decision they require anyway, if it goes to court, that you can be picked off. But if vast numbers of people refused to leave their homes, if those that were still in them in the same areas and communities supported those that refused to leave their homes on a vast scale, the system couldn't cope. It is absolutely dependent on the fact that we will not come together and support each other, and we will not en masse refuse to take part in our own enslavement. We have people who are out of homes with families, living in cars, living rough in other ways, while the home they've been foreclosed and kicked out of stands empty. Yeah. This is grotesque immorality. It is sheer undiluted evil. It shows no empathy, compassion, or any heart movement or energy of any kind within those and the system of those that are imposing this. People, 7 billion of us, how long are we going to take it from these people? Stop moaning. Come together and let's start doing, because it's a house of cards when we do that, but not until we do.
Brilliant.
Exactly, David. And when people do this, you know, such as vaccinations and all these other instances where people are educating themselves and making an informed, logical decision, the system then, of course, tries to bully.
Yeah,
but then
absolutely.
all that does is it shows, you know, what the system is, what the government is. They're
absolutely.
not, we haven't got the freedom. You know, when they repress us, that is the golden moment, because then more and more people just become awake to their bully tactics, and we win. So that's where it comes from. It's from that lawful rebellion.
Yeah, we need to become awake, however, on the level of understanding how the game works. I'm going to go into this in some detail at Wembley, particularly in the last section, because if we see what's going on and we respond with violence and all that stuff, we are playing into their hands for reasons I'll explain. And it's not just giving them the excuse to come the heavy hand with the military either. It's deeper than that. We need to understand the game and then stop playing it. And then the game must fall apart, because the people holding it together will cease to hold it together. But we need to get informed of how the game works first before we can undermine it in a way that's truly effective.
Oh, this is just, it's been a brilliant show, David. I just want to quickly touch, you were talked at the old festival, which is sort of a music festival. I think it's the last festival of the season. How are you taken there with the youngsters there, and how did all that go for you?
It's a video on YouTube that anyone can go to.
Oh, I'll have to check that out. I haven't seen that one.
So it was a very, very interesting day, a very enlightening day, because there was a large crowd turned up. And, you know, the majority who were quiet, but with the information, intelligent, decent people. And then there was the minority with the mega mouths who were trying to undermine it and stuff. And it was fascinating to see people who are awakening and people who are solid gold asleep, and how they receive the same information. I found it fascinating. But anyway, it's on YouTube, and you can see it. It's quite interesting. It was quite a day.
Brilliant, brilliant. So are there tickets still available for Wembley?
There's some still available, yeah, because we're talking to 5,500 people. But, you know, they're moving fast now. The closer it gets, the quicker they're going. And
they can be got you're on your website, through your website, davidicke.com.
Through the Wembley Arena box office,
and the Wembley Arena box office. And then for the live stream, they go onto your website and all the details are there.
Yep. And you know, not only do they get the live stream, of course, live for 10, 12 hours, they can also watch it back as many times as they like for a month afterwards. And what I'm saying to people, Lou, is, you know, it's 15 quid for the subscription, okay, for all of that, but get a few people in front of the same screen. Yeah. You know, I know there's someone in Arizona who's hired a hotel room. Like a hotel, you know, conference room to play it to people to come along, you know, and you know, that first of all brings the price down for people who are struggling for money to, you know, if you get enough people, virtually nothing. And it also gets people in front of the information. And I'm saying to people, please, encourage people that have never seen it, think I'm crazy, get them in front of it, get the skeptics in front of it, and let them see the strands put together. And then they can make a genuine decision on what they think of it, rather than dismissing something they don't even know they're going to hear.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much for your time. I will hopefully get to see. Well, I'm coming to Wembley. Hopefully, I'll be able to meet you at some point. Can't wait. Really looking forward to it. And then maybe we'll catch up again, maybe just before Christmas after you've recovered from Wembley, David.
Got a book to finish after that. Straight after that.
Well, try and get some rest. And thank you so much for spending your time with us tonight.
Yeah, the rest comes from seeing it being effective. That gives me all the energy I need.
Fantastic.
Great. Thanks a lot, David.
Thanks so much, David.